Hi everyone, this is Jed Schlackman, and I'm a holistic counselor and spiritual energy healer. And in this video, I want to talk about a couple of significant challenges or tests, you could say, that often arise as we're progressing on our journey of personal growth or spiritual evolution. These challenges involve confidence and compassion. So first, I'd like you to consider what occurs when you start to go through some type of spiritual awakening or rapid progress in the evolution of your consciousness. When this occurs, we often find ourselves sort of beyond the norm or ahead of the crowd in a sense, in terms of the way we're thinking, the way we're resonating, the way we're focused in our life at that particular point. So as you go through some type of advancement where you find yourself not conforming to the norms of society around you, where you have some type of awareness that in some way perhaps even conflicts with or challenges the consciousness of people in your social surroundings. And that could be your family, it could be people in your workplace, in your school, in some type of group or organization that you belong to. Whatever social grouping may be there, you seem to find yourself kind of moving beyond where they're at in their perspective or their state of consciousness. And since as human beings we naturally tend to seek and desire social belonging and acceptance, it can often be challenging to start to share or express, to show where you're at now in your journey, to present to other people what you're thinking about, what realizations you've come to, what experiences you've had, and so on. So in order to really fully share and express who you are, it takes confidence and courage in a sense, in particular when you're moving beyond the mass consciousness or group consciousness that tends to be predominant among other people in your environment. So this is something that pretty much everyone will come upon at different stages on their journey. At different times in your life, you may find yourself kind of moving beyond the people that have been the ones you're close to, or people that are your social group. And when this occurs, initially you may find yourself rather reluctant to challenge the group norm, to step outside of the box, so to speak, to break free of the matrix in that analogy. So you may initially want to be accepted, you may want to continue to fit in, you may want to avoid being criticized or persecuted in some way. And the reality is that sometimes people do act harshly or speak negatively toward you if you're no longer conforming to their beliefs or norms. You may actually be more conscious, more awake and aware than they are, and since they're not ready to even consider or embrace what you have to express, they may feel troubled by it, they may want to reject you in some way in order to maintain their own sense of being correct or being right in their way of seeing things. So it certainly is a possibility that people could react to you negatively, and it takes confidence and courage to be ready and willing to face that, to accept that you might be judged, you might be condemned or criticized, you might be discriminated against or persecuted in some manner, and yet ultimately that whole scenario or experience will serve your evolution. So you may need to be ostracized or pushed away from your existing social group, from people that you've been accustomed to being accepted by before. You may find yourself now drifting away from them, going through some type of transition process as you prepare to connect with some other social group, to start to resonate with other people who are more attuned to or aligned with the frequency that you have now shifted or risen to. So that process of shifting and changing and transitioning can often be uncomfortable. It's not always pleasant. It can be challenging, and it can be a major spiritual test. It's as though your soul, your higher self, or the Great Spirit is seeing if you're really ready to move ahead in this manner, if you're really solid and secure in your new way of understanding things in your expanded consciousness. So this issue of having confidence is very important there. Many people have had experiences where they've been criticized or challenged or ostracized, persecuted in some manner, and it feels unpleasant. They want to avoid going through that type of challenge or suffering again, so they will avoid asserting themselves or avoid doing anything that might create some resistance or conflict with other people around them. Yet ultimately, to progress on one's path, it may often be necessary to have that type of challenge arise, to actually face situations where people might indeed have conflicts with you or respond to you in some unpleasant or negative way. Now, another challenge that comes up as we progress on our personal path, as we develop spiritually, as our consciousness expands, as we see things from a more elevated, you could say a more enlightened type of perspective, from more of a unity consciousness or holistic view, perhaps from what you might call a higher dimensional or higher density level of understanding, we can become, in a way, arrogant, or we could start to look down on other people who have not reached the stage or state that we're at, those who are at a different state or point in their personal path of growth and development. We're not all meant to be equal in this sense. We're not all meant to grow and expand and evolve at the same pace or at the same time or in the same lifetime. We have many, many incarnations where we're exploring different types of experiences, learning different lessons, you could say, mastering different aspects of life and creation. So you can't expect other people to be at where you're at on your journey in this moment. So it's important to develop compassion, to recognize that we are all part of the same ultimate consciousness, the same source or supreme being, just having different experiences, different expressions and explorations of the potentials of existence. And each point of awareness, each being or entity is actually contributing to the awareness of the totality of the greater whole. So there's really nothing bad or wrong about anyone being at any point that they're at. No one is truly stuck per se. They've just remained at whatever point they're at until they're ready to move past it. And so it's not your place to condemn someone else for not being as conscious as you, as not being awake in the way that you're awake. Everyone has their own experiences to go through, their own journey to pass through, and all of those paths and journeys ultimately originate from and lead to the same divine source, we might say, the same spiritual wholeness or oneness. So as we go along and evolve and grow and start to develop a more advanced or expanded understanding of various aspects of life and existence, we can be cautious to not fall into a trap, in a sense, of looking down on others, of not judging them, not condemning them. We need to have or develop compassion for them if we actually want to go even further on our path, since compassion is a very important part of progressing or expanding our awareness toward the universal consciousness. If we're in any way rejecting or condemning other people or beings, then in some sense we're promoting a sense of separation, of disconnection from that divine source, the source that every person, every being is actually a part of, a reflection of. So I encourage each of you to cultivate compassion as you go forward on your path. You may be able to perceive or discern the distinction between where you're at and where someone else is at on their path, between how much you've learned or understood and how much someone else has learned or understood. We can have discernment about these things. We can appreciate the progress we've made as we kind of evaluate or compare ourselves to where others appear to be at on their path, but there really isn't anything wrong with where someone else is at. We can't force them to grow or evolve, and they don't have to be at where we're at for us to continue along on our path. Every path is part of the infinite, part of the totality. So to summarize what we've been talking about, as we go forward and progress a lot on our spiritual path or our personal growth, we often will feel or sense that we're going well beyond where many other people are at, or where most of those around us have reached at the current point. And when that happens, there's a couple of major challenges. One is the challenge to not be afraid to express and assert who you are now, to let yourself shine and share your light, so to speak. So to have the confidence and courage to do that when you might face resistance from other people around you who may not be ready to accept or appreciate you. And then the other challenge that we're examining is the challenge of having compassion, of not becoming overly prideful or arrogant, or judgmental toward people who are not able to see or understand things in the way that you are able to now. These are very vital points, I think, for each of us to appreciate if we want to experience greater balance in our life, greater harmony with creation, and to be more attuned to wholeness, to what we might call the divinity, to the source of our being, then having confidence and compassion are very valuable. So if you're interested in exploring these types of subjects, I invite you to watch some other YouTube videos I've created about spiritual growth and holistic wellness. You can also visit my website, which is phinsights.com. That's phinsights.com, where you can find additional resources, where you can learn about the different healing services that I share. For now, I'd like to wish everyone a wonderful day. Namaste.